Hello and welcome to Rank Class. In this episode, I'll be talking about roles in our social life and how we tend to rank people out from our bias and experience in the world. So, when we get into a group of people, we tend to fall into a role, and the role changes depending on the group of people we are with or the person that you're with. And the roles tend to follow us around, and you can see it in yourself or you can see it in other people. I try to talk about this in schools since sometimes we tend to force students into roles or co-workers for that matter. And if we force them into a role that they don't like having, we will make their life worse. And that is sad. And we all know people in these roles. If you look at the classroom you're in or have been in, you always remember that class clown, the one who did stupid stuff to be seen, to be heard, to make people laugh. But if you then took that kid or adult and went home with them, their roles might change because they might have been forced into the role of the class clown at a young age and can't break it. But then at home, they are free to actually be the role they want to be at home. But that role can also be forced depending on the home they live in. But what can we do? Well, we can try and have an open mindset and have an open talk about roles because it not only the person who has the bad role have to change the role, the way they act in a group of people, we as the group have to allow that person to actually try and get into another role because we can keep people into a role they don't like to be in. Like the school kid who were bullied tend to have that bullied role all through their life if they're not allowed to try and change their role, if there are not people around to help them achieve a different role. And it can have a negative impact on their life, and it can be really hard to get people around you to actually try and accept that you don't want that role anymore, that you want to change. And often you need a fresh start where you actually get into a new school, a new job, a new place where no one knows you, where you actually have a chance to decide the role that you want instead of being forced into a role that you don't like. The problem is we tend to fall into our old roles when we engage with new people. And it's something that we really need to be aware of. Otherwise, that role change will never happen and it will keep having a bad impact on our life. Like when I was a kid, I was put into a role where I believed I was stupid, that I couldn't achieve anything, that I was not able to learn. And then as an adult, after years of working and tried different stuff, I actually found out that I can achieve stuff, that I can do these things, and I became more self-aware, and I began to change the role where I was in. Instead of being the one that always feels dumb and feels insecure, I became curious in life and began to learn, and I did amazing. Or at least I think I did amazing when I look back to what I used to be in the role I had back then and to the role I have now. But if some adults have actually seen me with fresh eyes or another person with fresh eyes, we might have been able to help them change that role, that setting they've set their life on, so they can achieve something great. And we should really be better at talking about this and having an open mind about this because we can change a lot then. And roles can be good in some ways, they can also be bad. Like if you're pushed into the role where you always have to help other people because they expect it of you, and you can't really say no because they get mad and yell at you, well, then you have a good role that have been turned bad because you shouldn't feel bad not for helping people when you don't have time for it. So every role have benefits and every role have something that is bad for it. But we need to have an open mindset and open eyes to actually be aware of the roles. So when we grow up, and even as adults, we have a chance of picking our own role and the way that we want to be seen in life. And our bias here doesn't help this at all because we look at people and go like, oh, that person looks weird. And then we brand them into the role of being the weird one and forcing them into that role instead of letting them pick their own role because, yeah, they might look weird, but they might actually be a pleasant person who have problems finding out who they really are and who they want to be. And it could be good for all of us if we begin to look at the world and the people in the world with a better view, where we don't force roles onto people, but where we look at people as people and form our opinions and roles on how we act and what we do. So we don't have people who feel unwelcomed because we instantly give them a bad role, since it will allow us all to actually find our true self and not the self that other people put on you. And even when we are in a good role where we have self-esteem, we don't often show that to the world, the role that we want to have, because people might not believe you, people might not like you, or something like that, and it must make us question ourselves. So we end up not doing what we actually feel inside is true to us. And it takes a lot of guts to show who you really are inside. And it can often make people think that is a weird person, something like that, or that their bias will brand you because you're doing what you feel is right. I actually had a time where I tried to change my bad role into a positive one, where I actually tried beginning to be better towards other people, to be good, so to speak, in their eyes. And they didn't trust me. They thought I was up to ill things and I wanted to hurt them and stuff like that, because that is the role that they kept me in. So no matter what I tried, I was stuck in that role. And I could see it in my work as well, where kids get a role forced on them from their parents or the teachers, and it might not be a good role. And then from that role and their biases and our biases, we have these classes where we end up making stupid decisions, where we can come up and have a fight because of something that really isn't a fight to have. But just because we have this clash of bias and role and reality and who we are and who we want to be, we can have massive fights with ourselves and others because we feel like we're cornered. And an example of this is a kid I had once where the kid had been taught from home that the kid was superior to everyone else. So every time the kid were losing in a game, the kid had a anger problem because it shouldn't be happening because this kid were superior, so to speak, to everyone else. And it just clashed with that role that the person had been fed from home. And it didn't match with reality. And it's sad when something like that happens because it was a nice kid. But that role from home, that branding, just made the days worse for the kids when we had some sort of game where the kid was losing. And we as adults are also to blame in all this role giving because we all have those teachers who tell on other teachers about the new kids or the old kids, where they say like, oh, you have to be aware of that this kid will probably do this and will do this and this, and it might close a lot of people's eyes to this person because they have already been branded, they have already been shoved into this role by the other people, and it's the same when you go to a workplace where you might work somewhere and all the others go like, "Oh, you have to be aware of that dude over there because uh, that dude crazy." And instead of actually be allowed to go around and actually find out that dude might actually not be crazy. He might just be a bit weird because he has other priorities and stuff going on in his life than the other people. So what can we do? Well, we can keep an open mind, and if we see a person or hear them talk about how they feel that they ain't welcome or that they are forced into something that they don't really like, then we actually give them a chance to actually show that they can be something else than we have forced them into. Because we owe every person a chance to show that they are not what the world branded them to be. And I know some people have a lot of chances, and some people never change. Well, then they are stuck in that role. But we at least owe it to people to give them a chance to actually do it. So let's try and make this world a better place where we all, no matter how weird other people think we are or what shape we are in, that we can all get along. Since we are all just human beings, we are all just trying to fit into this weird world that we live on. And we do our best to feel seen, loved, and cared for. I do hope this episode has made you think a bit about roles and bias. And if you like this episode, you should listen to my bias episode because I use bias in this episode to talk about how we see people based on experience, and I cover that more in my bias episode. But you can follow me on Reddit, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Google, iPods, everything. I'm everywhere. So come join me, and I wish you all a very nice day.